As Dr. Eaton said, we're all committed to increasing the number of students who earn degrees. One important role that Maryland community colleges have successfully fulfilled for years is serving as the entry point for transfer to a four-year institution. I'm a product of that. I began at a community college and transferred on to a private institution. We have students in our institution that start with us and then transfer all to four-year institutions. But in my case, I earned my associate degree prior to transfer. In many of our students' case, however, they will transfer prior to continuing. We have and will continue to consider those students as successful outcomes, students who transfer prior to completion of their degree. However, we will continue to make a concerted effort to urge our students to attain the associate degree before transferring to the four-year institution. And there are a number of good reasons for doing so, but I'd just like to focus on one. Many times, life issues get in the way. They get in the way of the student's ability to complete his or her degree. Stan Jones spoke this morning, and he spoke to this very important issue in his keynote address. If the transferring student earns an associate degree before transferring, and then something happens that prevents them from fulfilling their goal of a bachelor's degree, even if it's just for a period of time, they will at least have an associate's degree to fall back on until they can cut back to school and complete that baccalaureate degree. But in some cases, they may never achieve that goal. Having earned the associate's degree gives them a credential that someone who's merely earned college credits will never have. But let's recognize that completion is not only about increasing the number of degrees we award. We also have certificate programs requiring less than 2 years of study that prepare students for immediate entry into the workplace in jobs with family-sustaining wages. We certainly do not want to underrate the value of a certificate or an industry certifications. However, we know that with more education, personal income increases. Certificates and industry certifications should be considered positive outcomes, but we will also continue to encourage our certificate graduates and licensure and certification completers to continue their education and eventually earn a degree. We have all committed to increasing our completion rates, and we're accepting this challenge even though we realize that there are costs associated with achieving this goal. We obviously have to do something differently in order to achieve a different outcome, that being to increase the number of degrees we award each year. This is one of the reasons that we're having this summit today, so we can share best practices and learn from one another. But many, if not most of these practices, will require additional resources. Over the past 3 years, community colleges have seen a steady decline in state funding on a per-student basis. We're also experiencing record enrollment. State and, in many cases, local funding reductions per student, coupled with increased enrollment, make these completion goals especially challenging. Now, let me be clear. The completion agenda is not about gaining increased funding for our institutions by having students stay with us longer. We're already experiencing record enrollment in all of our institutions. And that growth, to a very large extent, is unfunded. Oddly enough, in this economic climate, more students does not necessarily translate into a positive revenue stream because public funding is lacking. Increasing the number of graduates is about helping students and the state and our local communities to become more competitive. To the extent that our economy benefits from an increased number of well-trained graduates in the workforce in good-paying jobs, community colleges will hopefully benefit from the expanding tax base by receiving more appropriate levels of state and local funding. Since over 94% of our graduates stay in this state, there is clearly an economic incentive to support our efforts to increase college completion rates. These efforts will keep Maryland businesses competitive nationally and internationally. Thank you.